What subjects do pupils of different ethnic groups tend to study here in the UK in further education? In this video, I'm going to answer that question, and we're going to see that there are some quite clear patterns in this, and I'm going to suggest some potential reasons for the patterns that we see. So stay tuned as we dig into another data-driven analysis of life from a Black British perspective. My name is Eli Wananda. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't already subscribed, and let's get into this. We're going to use data from this excellent website called FFT Education Data Lab. I've used this site before. They release some superb analysis of educational data. This is an article from 2023, which is called "Which are the most popular Key Stage 5 subjects by ethnicity?" Key Stage 5 is the stage from post 16. So for those of you who are outside of the country, in the UK, we finish school, secondary school or high school at age 16, and we do our GCSEs, which stands for the General Certificate for Secondary Education. Then you have the choice to continue with the formal education or to go into employment or whatever you want to do. And most pupils across the board go into continue their education in most ethnic groups, but there are some very clear differences that we shall see now. So the bigger the bars here, the higher the proportion of school students who continue their education after school. And then you've got the ethnic groups there on the left-hand side. The highest participation rates are amongst Chinese pupils, where over 80% of them continue their education. Just below 80% of Indian students as well. Just over 70% of other Asian students, and just below 70% of Bangladeshi students. Then there's a small gap there to about 65% of Black African students, mixed white and Asian and white Irish, all there or thereabouts the 60% mark. Then there's a sort of gradual drop down. Pakistanis just under 60%. Other Black, mixed white, Black African and other white students, about 55% of them continue their education, formal education. Then less than 50%, and what's that? About 48% of white British students continue their formal education. And we're going to see, this is a pattern that we're going to see, that white British students tend to be toward the lower end of where you would want to be in these kind of gradients. I'm suggesting that actually continuing with your formal education after 16 is a good thing. By the way, you might disagree with that. And of course, there are exceptions to the rule. But I think in general, it's a good thing, because what you'll find is that the same ethnic groups who have the highest rates of participation in further education after 16 years old are the same ethnic groups who have the higher rates of income, the higher rates of wealth, the higher rates of family stability, the better health. So this isn't just some abstract education for the sake of education. Participation in education correlates with, and I would say helps to create, better outcomes in various other areas of life. So white British students tend to be at the middle or below, toward the end of these, the end you don't want to be, as are unfortunately Black Caribbean students and mixed white and Black Caribbean students. You can see there that only about 45% of Black Caribbean students continued their formal education. And that goes right down to only 40% of mixed white and Black Caribbean students. Then you've got Irish Traveller and Gypsy Roma, where 1 in 5 and 1 in 10 of them continue their formal education. The numbers of those who actually go into formal education are very, 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 very small anyway. So that's the first pattern that you see. Chinese way out the most, Chinese and Indian and other Asian way out the most likely to continue. Black Caribbean, white British and mixed white / Black Caribbean tend to be at the lower end. And the report points out that this pattern that you see here, the big bars for the Chinese, the smaller bars for the Caribbean and white British, reflect the attainment at school. And they make the point that the pupils of ethnic groups who tend to get the highest attainment at school level, so at Key Stage 4, are also the students, also the ethnic groups who tend to have the highest rates of participation in further education. Now, let's talk about the main point of this video, which is the subjects. What subjects do students of different ethnic groups tend to do? Well, the most popular subject for most ethnic groups, not all though, the most popular subject for most ethnic groups is mathematics. This chart here shows the proportion of students at Key Stage 5 now who are taking mathematics A-level by ethnicity. So the numbers on the left show you the percentage of pupils in each of those ethnic groups. It's not showing you that this isn't talking about the total percentages of pupils who are doing mathematics overall. So it's not saying that 60% of students at A-level who do maths are Chinese. No, they're saying that amongst the Chinese students, 60% of them in that year did mathematics. About 45% of other Asian and Indian did mathematics. Then you've got most of the other ethnic groups between around about 20 to 30% of them did mathematics. And at the right at the far end, you've got white British. Only about 20% of them did mathematics A-level. And then other black, mixed white, black Caribbean and black Caribbean, you're talking between 10 to 15% of them did mathematics. So, and another point I want to say is that there's also an A-level that's called further mathematics. I've never heard of this before until I started looking at all of this. And when you look at the percentage of each of these ethnic groups, students who did further mathematics, in addition to 60% of Chinese students doing mathematics, 15% of Chinese students did further mathematics. That is way out. Way, a much higher percentage of them compared to all of the other ethnic groups. So you've got a big drop down, half, the rate drops down to half when you get down to the Indians. So 7.5% of Indian students, then another pretty big drop down to 5.9% of other Asian, mixed white Asian and other white. About 5% of those did further maths. Then there's a gradient drop all the way down, and right at the bottom, so you got 3% of white British students did further mathematics, about 3% of mixed white black Caribbean, then you've got 2% of black African, and less than 2% of mixed white black Caribbean, Pakistani, other black, and less than 1% of black Caribbean students did mathematics, further mathematics at A-level in 2022. Here are some of my overall observations. Black Caribbean and mixed white black Caribbean students, from my understanding, are the most likely to do arts and social sciences. These are the top 10 most popular Key Stage 5 subjects for black Caribbean students. You'll see there that they're one of the few ethnic groups where mathematics is not the first or second most popular A-level. 7 out of these top 10 subjects for them were, you got psychology, sociology, business studies, history, economics. Those are social sciences. Maybe, and then English, and then you got a couple of art subjects. So English literature is an art subject, I believe, and then you got media film studies. So 7 out of the top 10 of these, the top 10 A-level subjects were arts or social sciences, with just 3 STEM topics. Mathematics in 3rd place, quite a bit below psychology and sociology. Then you've got biology, which is the 5th most popular, and chemistry, which is the 8th most popular subjects for black Caribbean students at Key Stage 5 in 2022. And these 2 ethnic groups, black Caribbean and mixed white black Caribbean, so mixed white, so i.e. pupils who've got 1 white parent and 1 black Caribbean parent, mixed race pupils, they're the only 2 major groups that had media and film studies in the top 10. Now, I just want to say, in case you think that I'm being disparaging toward these people, I will just remind you that I did media studies at A-level. I actually ended up only doing, so the 3 A-levels that I chose, this is many years ago, by the way, decades ago. The 3 A-levels that I chose were English language, history and media studies, all social sciences or arts, I suppose English. I switched from English language to English literature because I didn't really like English language. And then I flopped on English literature because I couldn't deal with all of the Chaucer nonsense and Shakespeare and all that. I just weren't interested in all that sort of stuff. So actually, I got a U in English literature at A level. But thankfully, I got an offer to go to the University of Birmingham, and I needed 18 points. So you get, back in those days, A was 10 points, B was 8 points, C was 6 points. So I knew that if I could get maybe 2 A's in the other 2 subjects, or an A and a B, I'd be sorted. And so I did. I got an A in media studies, and I got a B in history. I should have got an A. I may have mentioned my friend who, at the time, who I was gutted that I didn't get higher than what she got, but you know, life goes on. But so I'm not. This isn't to disparage anyone who's doing media studies. I did media studies. You know, media studies I think is a very, very, the things that you learn in media studies, I personally think are things that everyone should learn. Actually, for me, that really helped to open my eyes to how we are programmed by the media, the ownership. When you do media studies, you're not just studying media, you're not just watching films and talking about films, you're learning about the patterns of ownership. That's where I first learned about the concentration of corporations, how there used to be loads more companies that used to put media out and magazines, newspapers, and they were getting swallowed up by the big major corporations. Those major corporations now are also the same major corporations who dominate other sectors of society. They dominate not just media, they dominate technology, they dominate, you know, power, energy, all these kinds of things. So, you know, the media and film studies is not just the films and the TV shows or whatever themselves. It's also about the political economy of the media, the sociology of the media as a political and an economic phenomenon, you know? So that's not necessarily a bad thing that you know, the students are studying media and film studies. But those are the only 2 ethnic groups where you have media and film studies in the top 10 subjects, and they have a very high number, or a comparatively high number of arts and social science subjects in their top 10. So amongst students who are categorized as other black, you see that psychology, sociology are in 2 out of the top 3. But then you do have mathematics, biology and chemistry as 3 out of the top 5 there. White British students. Now, so out of the white British students here, mathematics was the most popular subject. But then you do have 3 out of the top 5 subjects there are social sciences. So you've got psychology, history and English literature. Biology is in 3rd place there. So again, white British students, quite a high prevalence of social science and art subjects for A-levels in 2022. Now, as we've seen already, Asian students, South Asian students and Chinese students, very heavily into STEM. So for Chinese students in particular, this is just quite something to behold. So look at that. By far the most popular subjects amongst Chinese students, mathematics, way more than the other subjects. And then you see that the top 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 subjects are STEM subjects. You've got mathematics, way out. Then you've got chemistry, 2nd place. Then you've got biology. Then you've got physics. And then you've got further mathematics in 5th place. So I think only the Chinese and maybe the other Asian, mixed white and other Asian. Let's have a look. I think they might be the only ethnic group that had further mathematics in their top 10 of A-level subjects. And then you've got physics as well. Most ethnic groups, when you look at these tables, these charts or whatever for most of these ethnic groups, physics, it either isn't in the top 10 or is at number 10. Whereas for the Chinese, physics is 4th. So extremely heavily into STEM subjects. And another interesting thing as well, out of the other 5 subjects, Chinese students were the only ones to have computer science in there. So actually 6 out of the top 10 A-level subjects were STEM subjects. Computer science is a STEM field, isn't it? It's a STEM subject. So very, very heavily into STEM fields. Mixed white and Asian students. I'll just look at a couple of other ethnic groups. Fairly similar picture. The top five subjects, most popular subjects were STEM subjects. So mathematics, biology. No, sorry, 4 out of the top 5 were STEM subjects. Mathematics, biology, chemistry and physics, 4 out of the top 5. Psychology is in 3rd place there, just breaking up that. And then when you look at other Asian students. Other Asian students, the top 3 are STEM subjects. Again, mathematics, a large majority of by far the most popular subject was mathematics for other Asians. You've got physics in 5th place rather. And then they're the other ethnic group that had further mathematics in the top 10. Number 10 were other Asians. When we look at Black African students now, you'll see that yes, mathematics is the most popular subject. And the top 3 actually are mathematics, biology and chemistry. Physics is down there at 10th place. In between those, you have social sciences and arts. So psychology, sociology, English literature, economics, history and business studies. Pakistani students, they are one of the other few ethnic groups that don't have mathematics as the most popular subjects. But in place of that is biology, chemistry. Biology and chemistry are the top 2. Mathematics close 3rd. Physics down there at number 10, and then you've got psychology, sociology and so forth. What's the reason? Why is it that you have these strong ethnic patterns with regard to participation in certain types of subjects? To keep it brief, so as not to long out this video too long, I believe it comes down to parents. I believe it comes down to household environment. And I believe it comes down to the motivation and the care and the attention of parents and families to nurture their children through their early education, through their years of schooling, in such a way that they have the time and headspace to focus. Because, I do a fair amount of science stuff with my children. And one thing I've realized is that it takes time for me as a parent to sit down and, for example, understand what an atom is. It takes time for me to sit down and understand what are the component parts of an atom: protons, neutrons, electrons. Then it takes me time to sit down and understand what's electricity. What actually is electricity? Oh, electricity is the movement of electrons going through a substance. Okay, so why are some substances more conductive of electricity than others? Well, it's because of something to do with the way that the atoms are formed and how closely they hold the electrons. It takes time. It takes time to sit down and understand addition, multiplication, division. It takes time to understand algebra. All of these things take time and quietness and headspace. It takes physical space to be able to sit down, and quietness to be able to sit down for the children and quietly understand the basic building blocks of STEM fields, STEM topics. And the more likely, what's going to make it more likely that you as a family are going to have the space and the time and the headspace to be, for you as parents and you as students, children, to be learning all these things? Well, unfortunately, I have to bring up that if you're a single parent, it's going to be extremely difficult for that mother, it's usually mothers, it's going to be very difficult for that mother to be able to, particularly if they've got more than one child, but even if they don't, if they're also working, to be able to find the time and effort and energy to be putting that time in. Then you've got the fact that a lot of our people live in quite cramped conditions, flats and in inner city areas where it's noisy, a lot of children in the house. Overcrowding is a particular issue for our Somali brothers and sisters. Very, 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 very high prevalence of overcrowding in housing. That's going to have a negative impact on the ability for children to be, studying anything, to be honest. Like we've seen, yes, black children are more likely to be studying social sciences and arts, But even those black children who are studying those social sciences and arts are not getting your A's, really. Why is that? It's to do with something to do with these kinds of things that I'm talking about. And what I'm trying to get at is that with a lot of these things that I talk about, a lot of it, some of the reasons for the issues, the problems that we have come down to our family structures. And the problems in our family structures, the majority of Black Caribbean children raised by single mothers, probably half or more of Black African children being raised by single mothers. That brings with it a level of instability, a level of reduced resources is the other thing. Because the other thing you can do, a lot of what these Chinese and other people do is that either they are spending the time with their children, teaching them and coaching them and whatnot, or they are paying for tutors, kumons, they're paying for tutors and they're ferrying their children to the tutors 2 times a week or whatever it is to do that study. Either you need either the space and time and energy, or you need the material resources, the disposable income to invest in your children. And I just think that for many reasons, we as Black people, we as Black adults, do not place a high enough priority on creating the conditions for our children to educationally achieve highly. That's what it just comes down to. Because if we had that as a high priority, and remember, it's not just about getting A's at GCSE and A's at A-level or whatever, getting first at university. In and of itself, it's not just that. Those things bring with them plentiful opportunities. Those things, the higher educated that you are, the more highly educated you are, the more healthier you're going to be. Why? The degree doesn't make you healthy. It's that when you study and you achieve highly, you're likely to develop those skills and motivations and abilities to sort out your health, understand your physical health, your mental health. You're also more likely to, I would say, I know people throw this, deferred gratification thing around a lot, but that is a factor. If getting into studying at a young age, and by the way, I don't mean just staying indoors all the time studying, because, one of the things with a lot of these Chinese people is that they have quite bad eyesight, myopia in the Far East. Short-sightedness is skyrocketing. And a large part of that is because they spend so much time indoors doing close work, reading and computers and stuff like that. We don't want to go down that road. One of the things I try and do is, as much as possible, when I'm reading with my boys, do it outside, because, I don't want them to become myopic, short-sighted bods. You know what I mean? I want them to be well-rounded, proud, Pan-African, soulful, spiritual, intelligent, boys. I want them to be all-rounded, physically achieving. They play football. They're both good at football. That's what I want. It's got to be all-rounded. But the point is that what was I saying? When you're focusing on your studies and so forth at a young age, you're learning to control your impulses to want to go and run around and shout and play and do all that sort of stuff all the time. And you're learning that actually, there'll come a time for that. But right now, I'm focusing on understanding this subject. I'm exercising my neurons. I can exercise my brain later. I can exercise as they get older. I can exercise my loins later. There's a time for the girls. There's time for the boys. There's time for love and relationships. There's a time for that. But it's better to focus most of your time on the studies. And I think that, the point I'm making is that we as Black people in particular, I'm speaking from my people because I know us. I don't, really know Pakistanis who also don't achieve great. I don't know much about them, or Gypsy Roma or whatever. But for our people, both Caribbean and African continental intermediate origin, we're all from the same roots. But for us, we have to take a long, hard look at ourselves and start to consider, what are we living actually for? What's the point of all of this? Are we just here to or are we just having children just for the sake of procreating, to then just leave them to fend for themselves and become, and I don't mean this in a disparaging way, but Do we want them to only be doing all of the hard, heavy labor, the mopping up, the cleaning and all this? Is this our lot? Is this what we really think that we are here for? To cook and clean and be the care workers for other ethnic groups while they live their life to the fullest? And is that what we're here for? It's not. Believe me, I'm telling you, it's not. That's not what we're here for. If that's, you might not think that that's what you think we're here for, but the proof is in the pudding. You shall know them by their fruits. Somebody said, look at the fruits of our lives. Look at what's happening to our children. Look at their relationships. Look at their income. Look at their wealth, lack of wealth. Look at their mental health. Look at the incarceration rates amongst our boys in particular. All of that, that is the real evidence about our mindset with regard to our place in this world. And I know I come across as preachy and criticizing us and so forth. I know this, but guys, listen, I'm old enough now to be past the stage of wanting to be polite and make you feel good about being black and only doing that. That is important, but we've got to start to create motive. We need a direction. We need to change our minds. We need a revolution in our minds. And we need to start equipping one another with the information and the tools and the motivation and the skills that we need to start choosing our partners correctly. If you're going to be having to have safe sex, do not have children. Don't have unprotected sex. It's an obvious thing, but don't have unprotected sex with people that, if push came to shove, you would be happy to build a family with. Don't do it. Because every time we do that, every child that comes into the world without their father around, to a mother who doesn't have a strong family support network and has toxic relationships with her mother and all this sort of stuff, and who themselves doesn't have a high level of education, and it's just a conveyor belt. People talk about the school to prison pipeline. It's the womb to low vibration living pipeline that we need to deal with, So STEM. I bang on about STEM, not because STEM is some magical thing in and of itself. That I truly believe that STEM, amongst other things, like marriage, like getting outside being outside in the daylight, in the sunlight, in nature, all these are things that if we have doing those things as a motivation, we will gradually start to see that our lives, all the things that we do, all of our energies will be directed in a direction that will lead to our individual upliftment, our family's upliftment, and ultimately our race's upliftment. That's my word. That's my thesis. Okay. So hope you've enjoyed that. I didn't mean to quite go off as much as I did, but hope you've enjoyed that. I do look forward to your thoughts and your any questions that you have. Make sure you check out my Substack, which is eliwananda.substack.com. My apologies. Thank you, first of all, to all of you guys who supported me on Buy Me a Coffee and, paid supporters on Substack. It's been busy last few weeks. It's been half term, and then there was Easter this and bank holidays. It's been very, very busy. So I'm a little bit behind on updating the Substack. So we'll get back onto that. But there's other videos as well on this. I mentioned I did a video about A-level achievement. So that's one here which you can check out there. And then there's another video here which the YouTube algorithm will choose is best for you after having watched this. So take care of yourself, and I'll speak to you soon. Peace.